a second weekend of prolonged heavy rain has brought flooding in areas across the country. The Environment Agency said it expected significant flooding to continue into the next week. There are currently 409 flood alerts across England, Scotland and Wales, with 339 flood warnings. 6 severe flood warnings are still in place, meaning there's a danger to life. 4 on the River Teme and 2 in South Wales, including the River Taff at Pontypridd. Our Home Affairs correspondent Andy Davis is in Nant Garw tonight. Andy.
Well, rescue workers here today told me that they hadn't seen anything like it in decades. Dozens of residents in this village have now been moved out as the flood levels finally begin to drop. But the scale of the flooding across Wales has caused huge disruption. In this county borough alone, the council leader told us today that more than 500 residential properties have been flooded. It could be as many as 1,000. They're still getting reports coming in. And as far as the damage is concerned, it was so serious that South Wales Police declared a major incident this afternoon. And the fact that the Met Office issued a rare red warning gives you some indication of just how much concern there's been. Some very dramatic scenes overnight, particularly in Pontypridd, where the river there has reached its highest level in over 40 years. And I was chatting to a man there in one of the streets who told me how in the early hours this morning he grabbed the hand of a passing taxi driver, hauled him out of his car moments before the car was swept into the river. The Welsh Government has tonight said that it will be giving extra cash to councils to deal with the aftermath of Storm Dennis. At one end of the street, they were being helped to safety. At the other, amidst the collection of abandoned cars, the rescue operation continued. Some had to be stretchered out, many of them elderly. Others were carried. A constant stream of flood evacuees, cold and exhausted.
This flooded way up. Yeah. All the furniture, all the carpets, everything gone.
What's the scene inside?
Pretty bad. It came down to, well, I'm 6'4", it came down to about my waist. So it's pretty deep, but we managed to get out of the back.
We had the phone call at 5 o'clock this morning to see if we could do anything and go and rescue the dogs. Basically, one unfortunately passed away, and we managed to save Millie, and we're going to take her to the vets now.
Is there anything I can carry?
No, I don't think.
Yeah, do you want to drop that for you?
Thank you.
As Nant Garw's residents are taken to one of the area's 3 emergency centres, and the boats keep coming, others like Michael Smith, the owner of MS Auto's garage, surveys the damage.
Like 60,000, £70,000 with this equipment, garage equipment, let alone all the cars in it at the same time. It's just absolutely devastating, and there's still so many people out there suffering.
Well, they're 7 hours into this particular operation, and they're still bringing out residents. South Wales Fire and Rescue have just stated that since midnight, they've received over 1,000 calls. This was the scene in Crickhowell, 20 miles away. The Coast Guard sends in a helicopter to take out the last person on site at a caravan park. The River Usk, like others across Wales, bursting its banks overnight. He's winched to safety. Others in the village reported flooding at ceiling level. Parts of Wales saw more than 150 millimetres of rainfall in 48 hours, far exceeding the average monthly total.
So this is out the front of the house. It looks like a river, it's not a canal.
In the Neath Valley, this is what some residents awoke to. In Pontypridd, it was car parks flowing like waterfalls. More than 600 people had been evacuated from homes in Rhondda, Cynnon Taff last night. This street saw cars swept away. And this morning, opposite where the wall had collapsed, residents like Linda Davis had been clearing up since dawn. It smashed the wall down?
It smashed the wall down, but it was the speed that the water was flowing. It was a terrific speed, yes.
A bit scary?
It was very, very scary. Very, very scary.
What did you find when you came into the house this morning?
Well, it's just complete wreckage. I mean, everything's, there's a skip full. Well, we've just lost the pets. Well, like one cat we found dead. And I think the neighbours found one, and she had 3, and the other one's missing. So we've just buried the one in the garden up here. So
you've just buried the cat?
The one cat, yeah.
Further downstream in Taftswell, images of flooded playgrounds and clubhouses replicated scenes elsewhere. These fields are near the centre of Cardiff. And among the most dramatic images of the day...
Oh my God, that's bad.
This landslide on a hill near Tylerstown in the Rhondda Valley. Tonight, engineers are monitoring the hill for signs of further movement, and that could mean yet more properties being evacuated.
Andy Davis reporting there. Well, the threat for many communities remains this evening. Our weather presenter Liam Dutton joins us now from South Wales. Liam.
Thanks, Jackie. Well, as we've just seen, there's been a massive amount of rain falling in here in South Wales in the last 24 hours. 6 inches of rain falling in some spots. And that rain has fallen on ground that's already saturated from the rainfall that we had with Storm Kira last weekend. Now, it's no surprise that the Met Office issued its highest tier red level warning for the first time in a number of years, and there's been hundreds of flood warnings and flood alerts across the UK, including some severe flood warnings as well. Now, it's not just been here in South Wales that's been badly hit. Over the border into Herefordshire, there's been some serious flooding as well, parts of Shropshire. You've got some pictures here showing the situation in Worcestershire, so the flooding has been serious and over quite a big area. But on a more positive note,
Water rose early in the morning to leave parks and streets part hidden by flooding around the centre of Hereford. Yet another case study in the story of the unrelenting February storms. Here they're having to take a paramedic by boat into a stranded neighbourhood. They know all about flooding here, but rarely on this scale.
So what we're doing now is we're sending boats out to go and rescue people, which we've done since first thing this morning. So we've made approximately about 20 to 25 rescues so far.
How many of the residents have been moved out?
There's a lot of people that have been moved out. There's not very many people left, really. They've been brilliant, the emergency services, up and down constantly all day. Really, really good. Can't thank these people enough.
And so in increasingly familiar flood-induced choreography, more churches and leisure centres are turned into temporary shelters. The Environment Agency said in places the River Wye had reached its highest levels since records began 200 years ago.
It's the worst I've ever seen it. Ever since I've been here, and I've been running around this place for 3 donkey's years.
In Worcestershire, police searching for a 55-year-old woman missing after being swept into floodwater by the River Team said this evening they'd found a body. By mid-morning, more than 500 flood alerts and warnings covered much of England, following a record number the day before. This was the scene in Guildford in Surrey. And with more flooding came more criticism of the UK government response. Today, the Environment Minister said they were committing billions of pounds to flood defences.
The flood infrastructure that we have in place, the flood defence infrastructure, has worked as expected and has protected around 20,000 homes in this particular incident. I know that's no comfort at all, obviously, to the 400 homes that have been flooded.
So the emergency operations are continuing this evening in Hereford, but in other parts of the UK which bore the brunt of the weekend storms, it's the aftermath they're now having to deal with. Particularly in South Wales, we found business after business immersed in the wreckage of the weekend.
Bit of damage here.
Phil Thomas shows us his microbrewery, still spewing floodwater. This image from the police helicopter shows the scale of the flooding they encountered on just this one industrial estate.
I came in, walked in through the door with my wife and 2 kids, and I was in tears. I was in tears. You know, I've been here for 5 years, building up the business slowly but surely, and you know, in one evening, there's £10,000 worth of damage, or perhaps more.
The First Minister of Wales, a few miles away in Pontypridd, knows there's also major infrastructure damage beyond the chaos at street level, where for some residents it's still a struggle to access their properties.
And it's just not shifting, is it?
And those who have are left in despair.
Obviously, it's come up to the 6 foot on the wall and absolutely devastated.
Kerry Loveridge woke up on the sofa surrounded by water. Like others, she feels warnings could have been clearer.
Gutted, devastated, and all cried out. I am angry, very angry. As you can see, we are literally going to be out of this house for, it's going to be about 6 months, if not longer.
And now here it's Plaid Cymru accusing a Labour government of underinvestment in flood defences. Some are asking questions about whether your government has got a grip on this issue.
Well, no government could have predicted what happened here over the weekend. This government will spend £350 million in this Assembly term alone on flood defences in Wales.
Back in Hereford, the flood levels are now slowly receding. But in neighbouring Worcestershire, the threat of rising water remains as we enter yet another night of people being told to leave their homes.
Well, Greyfriars Avenue here is usually a pretty pleasant place to live, just yards from the town centre and not far from the River Wye. But with that river at its highest level in 200 years, people living here on a floodplain have had to leave, grabbing what they can of their belongings. I spent the afternoon with one family ferried back to check on their home by their neighbour and volunteer flood warden. This quiet little cul-de-sac in Hereford is today a backwater in all senses of the word. Storm Dennis took the River Wye at the bottom of the street to record high levels, and householders like teaching assistant Lydia Williams have been forced from their homes.
For me, it was just so overwhelming. So obviously last time our house didn't get flooded, it just missed out on it. But as soon as me and my mum saw it coming in and went back to sleep, and then we woke up to all our downstairs underwater, just so shocked.
Neighbour and volunteer flood warden Colin Taylor is steering us past the floating detritus to the house where Lydia's lived with her parents for 6 years. He's never seen anything like this.
98 was the biggest flood.
Was it worse than this?
No, that was the biggest flood on, or second biggest highest flood on record. This is outrageous by over a foot of water.
If you go there, then you'll be on top, you'll be higher.
Lydia's mum didn't want to make the journey back because she was too upset to see the damage flooding has done to the home they'd lovingly renovated. A new kitchen completed just 4 months ago. That crashed over in the middle of the night, didn't it?
It was this morning. That toppled over and started floating, so you can feel how soggy that is.
Yeah. In the dining room, there's more devastation. A sodden mess of photo albums, the memories within in danger of being washed clean away.
You can see all your family belongings will just vanish like that.
And something like photos is irreplaceable,
it's so
isn't it?
precious to you. It's very overwhelming and just a massive shock. Yeah, it's really, really emotional.
Back on dry land, we meet Lydia's mum, Lindsay. So we just went back with Lydia. Tell us why you didn't want to come back.
Well, it's the first time it's ever flooded, and it's the first time I've been in this situation. So I just thought if I went back now, it would probably really upset me, because it's still a bit of a shock to think that I'm not going home tonight to sit on my sofa.
This street was built on a floodplain in the 1930s. When Lydia's family bought it, they knew it was a risk. But until last night, it had never flooded so badly. It'll be months before they can return their home to some semblance of normality. Now they're wondering if this is the new normal. Well, joining me now is Mark Garnier, the MP for Wyre Forest, a neighbouring constituency which has flooded in the past, and the Reverend Ruth Hulse, who's the Church of England's Dean for the Hereford area. Mark Garnier first. The River Wye here is at its highest level since records began, clearly unprecedented. What do you want the government to do, more than it's already doing, to protect people here and in your constituency?
Well, the good news is in my constituency, actually going back as far as Tony Blair's government, they brought in some demountable flood barriers in Bewdley, and that type of approach is incredibly good. One of the important things I think we are promising is an extra £4 billion spent over the next 5 years. And what I think we want to see...
On flood defences.
And I think what we want to see is more of this type of demountable flood defences that can come in. But where you can't do the demountable flood defences, you want to have property-level defences. So there's lots of different ways you can approach it. And I think taking a sort of cohesive approach to this is the way forward.
Would you like the Prime Minister to visit here, and would that help?
Actually, I don't think it would. What I really want is George Eustace to carry on doing the job he's doing.
He's the Environment Secretary.
He's the Environment Secretary. I had Rebecca Power in my patch yesterday, who's the Floods Minister. So she came up to see what was going on. It's great having the Prime Minister. It looks good on telly, but do you know what? I'd rather he kept out of the way while the Environment Agency did their
It'd
stuff.
be a liability.
Well, I wouldn't like to say that.
But should he convene Cobra, though, given how many people have been forced out of their homes? This is an extraordinary situation.
I don't know whether you should convene Cobra or not. I mean, I've, as a minister, sat in on a couple of Cobra meetings over things which were substantially bigger than this. Look, maybe. But how you deliver the stuff is not about how you hold the meeting. It's actually what you do on the ground. And the Environment Agency, I would keep repeating, is doing a fantastic job. As, by the way, is Jessie Norman, who's a local MP here.
The Environment Secretary said that the government couldn't protect everybody. We're standing here on a floodplain. Is it time to acknowledge that parts of this constituency, parts of your constituency, will in future be uninhabitable?
I wouldn't say as far as uninhabitable. I mean, I think one of the things we need to look at, and actually looking at these houses, I mean, the first thing I'd say is how unbelievably disruptive and awful it is for the people who live here. But at some point they're going to have to repair their houses. You know, maybe we need to start thinking about when you put the house back into working order, actually you do it in a way where the ground floor can be, cleaned up relatively easy, so you don't have carpets, you don't have soft furniture on the ground floor. Maybe we need to just change the way we live in order to be able to adapt to these types of climate changes.
Let me bring in the Reverend Ruth Hulse now. We've just touched there on the sort of human suffering this is causing, and I saw it this afternoon as well. What are you grabbing from your parishioners about how they're coping with this?
I've been astounded by the community spirit that's come out, actually, that neighbours are looking after neighbours and all the different agencies are working together. So I've been in contact with local councillors and fire and rescue teams and, as I said, neighbours and residents and churches, and they're all working together to try and provide safety and warm, dry places for these people who have had horrendous experiences with these floods, second time in a matter of months. And it's been great to see the community spirit, but under such awful circumstances.